Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The sound of rushing water filled the small bathroom, steam curling around the air like a living thing. My heart was already racing before he even touched me. The mirror was fogged, the tiles slick, and the space between us charged with something neither of us wanted to name out loud. I could feel the heat of him at my back, close enough to sense every breath, but not close enough to touch. Not yet. His voice came low, rough from something deeper than words. "You're really going to ignore me like that?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My hands were steady only because I pressed them against the sink. The reflection staring back at me showed a woman pretending to be calm, but her pulse gave her away, fluttering wildly at the base of her throat. He moved closer. The distance vanished, the space filling with the scent of water and skin. One hand brushed my arm, slow and deliberate, tracing the line from my wrist to my shoulder. My breath caught. Every nerve in my body came alive at once, like sparks under wet skin. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. The silence was thick enough to feel, heavy with everything we hadn't said in days. The tension between us was almost painful, like standing too close to a flame and daring it to burn you. Then, without warning, he reached past me, turning the shower handle. The sudden rush of hot water hissed against the tiles, and he looked at me, really looked, eyes dark, steady, unreadable. The sound of the water drowned everything else out, but his meaning was clear. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't even about words. I took one step back, and that was all the permission he needed. The heat from the shower hit my skin first, then his hands, firm, sure, pulling me into the mist until the world disappeared behind a curtain of steam. Outside, the water kept running, the temperature slowly dropping. But neither of us moved. And as the glass fogged completely, one question lingered between us: how long before the water went cold? The sound of the shower filled the silence between us, louder than our words, louder than the thoughts running wild in my head. Steam curled around us, softening every line, every edge, until the whole room felt like it was breathing with us. He was close enough now that I could feel the rhythm of his breathing at the back of my neck. The air between us shimmered, thick with heat, thick with the weight of everything we hadn't said. When his hand brushed my shoulder, it wasn't rough. It was almost hesitant, like he was asking a question without words. My skin responded before my voice could, every nerve sharp, every heartbeat louder. I turned slightly, enough for our eyes to meet through the haze. The look he gave me wasn't impatient. It was steady, searching, and it pulled me in like gravity. A drop of water slid down his temple, tracing the edge of his jaw. My hand lifted on instinct, brushing it away. I didn't mean for the touch to linger, but it did. For a second, neither of us breathed. The steam made everything slower, dreamlike. The sound of water sliding down our skin blurred the line between what was real and what was about to be. His fingers found mine under the spray, hesitant but sure, locking together as if testing how far we could go before it became too much. The air smelled of soap and skin and heat. My voice came out low when I finally spoke, just his name, nothing more, but it was enough to pull him closer. Every small movement carried more weight than it should have. The brush of a thumb. The shiver that followed. The quiet sound of water hitting tile while we stood caught in the middle of something that felt dangerous in its stillness. I could feel it, the shift. The point where holding back would stop being possible. He exhaled, slow and deliberate, his breath against my ear sending a quiet tremor through me. One more second. One more breath. And then, something in the air broke, and the space between us vanished completely. The sound of the shower had become a rhythm, steady, hypnotic, like it was keeping time for something neither of us wanted to admit. Steam drifted through the air, turning every drop of water into light. The space between us was gone now, but what filled it was more than touch. It was restraint, thin, trembling, about to break. His hand hovered near my waist, not quite touching, just close enough that the heat from his skin was unmistakable. That single inch of air felt heavier than the water falling over us. My breath caught again, short and uneven. He heard it. I knew he did. "Say something," he murmured, his voice barely rising above the rush of water. I wanted to, but the words stayed trapped behind the pulse pounding in my throat. Instead, I turned to face him fully. The steam blurred the world around us, leaving nothing but his outline, shoulders tense, eyes locked on mine, chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. A drop of water slid from his hair, down his neck, over his collarbone. My gaze followed it before I could stop myself. He noticed, the corner of his mouth twitching in the faintest hint of a smile, half challenge, half invitation. Then his hand found mine. It wasn't rough, it wasn't even sure. Just slow, deliberate, tracing a path that made it hard to breathe. My fingers trembled against his, but I didn't pull away. Neither did he. The air around us thickened with the kind of silence that makes every sound louder, every inhale, every small shift of movement. I could feel his breath against my cheek now, the warmth of it clashing with the cool mist curling around us. For a moment, it felt like the whole world had narrowed to this: heat, heartbeat, hesitation. Every instinct screamed to step back, to break the spell before it shattered completely. But then he leaned closer, and my resolve wavered. The distance between our lips was a breath, one heartbeat, one decision. But the water turned colder first. We both froze, caught between want and restraint, suspended in the second before everything could change. The water drummed harder now, echoing in the small space like a heartbeat neither of us could ignore. The temperature had shifted, no longer hot, not yet cold, hovering in that in-between where everything felt sharper. He stepped closer, slow enough for me to feel every inch of air disappear between us. His breath brushed my skin, soft but deliberate, each exhale sending another ripple through the space we shared. The fog on the glass thickened, trapping us in a private world of heat and silence. My pulse wouldn't settle. His hand found the edge of the counter behind me, pinning me there without touching me. The closeness made it impossible to think clearly. Every movement was magnified, the drop of water that rolled off his jaw, the faint tremor in my hands as I tried to steady myself, the quiet inhale that gave away how much I wanted to stay right there. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Tell me to stop." I didn't. Instead, I looked up, meeting his gaze. Whatever held me in place wasn't fear, it was the pull, the gravity that had been building between us for days, maybe longer. His eyes searched mine for an answer I couldn't put into words. The tension cracked like thunder. His hand rose, slowly, as if he was still giving me time to decide. When his fingertips brushed a strand of wet hair from my face, it felt electric. Every nerve responded at once, caught between restraint and surrender. The water kept falling, softer now, tracing patterns across our skin. The steam pressed closer, turning every breath into a confession. He leaned in, close enough that I could see the pulse in his neck, close enough that I could feel the hesitation, one final line waiting to be crossed. My hands lifted on their own, resting lightly against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath. For a moment, we just stood there, two heartbeats caught in the same storm. Then the power flickered, the bathroom lights dimming to a faint golden haze. The sound of the water became everything. The world outside didn't exist anymore. And in that breathless second, we both knew, whatever came next couldn't be undone. The world had shrunk to steam and shadows, every heartbeat echoing against the tile. The air trembled between us, full of words neither of us dared to say. Then, a sound cut through the water. Sharp. Out of place. We both froze. At first, I thought it was the pipes, the building settling under the weight of too much heat. But then it came again, 3 short knocks, quick, deliberate, against the bathroom door. He turned toward the sound, eyes narrowing, every muscle in his body shifting from heat to alert. My pulse raced for a different reason now. The silence that followed was worse than the noise itself. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He nodded once, barely. The steam curled between us, suddenly colder. Another knock. Louder. The room that had felt 2 small seconds ago now felt like a trap. I stepped back, reaching for a towel, my fingers shaking though I tried to hide it. He killed the water, leaving only the hiss of steam fading from the air. Whoever was on the other side of that door waited, silent. Then a voice, soft, calm, too calm. "Everything all right in there?" It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't a friend. It was the voice of someone who shouldn't have known where we were at all. He shot me a look, half warning, half question, but I had no answer. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure whoever stood outside could hear it through the wall. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Stay quiet." For a moment, all I could hear was our breathing again. Close. Uneven. Fear had replaced the earlier tension, but it carried the same charge, an edge that made the air taste electric. The doorknob turned. Just a fraction. Enough to make the metal click. He reacted fast, crossing the space in 2 strides, pressing his hand flat against the door before it could open. His other hand motioned for me to stay back. The water still dripped from his hair, tracing a line down his arm as he whispered something I couldn't make out. Whoever was out there didn't push. They waited. Then the footsteps moved away, slow and deliberate, fading down the hall until the only sound left was the steady drop of water hitting tile. We stood still for a long moment, listening, trying to believe it was over. But it wasn't. Because when I finally looked back toward the mirror, through the steam clearing from the glass, there was something written there. Words traced by a fingertip before the condensation had faded: "You shouldn't be here." The air went cold. And just like that, the heat that had filled the room turned to something else entirely, something darker, something that made it impossible to look away. The words on the mirror glared back at us, the letters running slowly as the steam slid down the glass. "You shouldn't be here." For a second, neither of us moved. The silence pressed against my ears like pressure underwater. He turned toward me, chest still heaving from the rush of adrenaline, eyes darker than before. "This isn't possible," he said quietly. But it was there, clear, deliberate, undeniable. Someone had been in this room. He reached for the mirror, wiping his hand across the glass, smearing the warning into streaks of fog. The reflection that looked back at us didn't feel like ours anymore. We weren't the same people who had stepped into that shower minutes ago. Then the lights flickered again. Once. Twice. The sound came from behind the door, footsteps, faint but real. I felt the pull of fear and something else, something that refused to break even as danger pressed in from every side. The air still carried that same magnetic current, sharp and electric. I could see it in his face, the way tension mixed with protectiveness, the way instinct replaced reason. He moved closer, one arm sliding around me, not for passion this time but to shield me. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The door creaked open on its own. A burst of cooler air swept through the steam, scattering the fog like smoke. No one was there. Only a phone lay on the floor, its screen still glowing with a live video feed, our video feed. The bathroom. Us. The shower. Someone had been watching. My stomach dropped. He picked up the phone, scrolling fast, searching for where the feed led. His expression changed in an instant, confusion twisting into horror. "It's from my account," he said. But he didn't finish. The phone buzzed in his hand, a message flashing across the screen: "Now they know." The last of the steam vanished, leaving us standing in the cold light, breathless and exposed, realizing the heat between us had been the least dangerous thing in the room. The phone's screen dimmed, and silence fell like a curtain. The message still burned in my mind, now they know. He stood there for a long moment, his shoulders tight, water dripping down his arms, chest rising and falling as if he were fighting both fear and something deeper. I wrapped the towel tighter around myself, trying to find words, but the weight of what had just happened made them impossible. He finally looked at me. Whatever had been between us, desire, danger, everything tangled together, still burned, but now it was laced with realization. The world outside that bathroom had already intruded. Who sent that? I asked quietly. He shook his head, eyes darting toward the darkened hallway. Someone who knows us too well. We stepped out together, the steam trailing behind like a ghost of what had almost been. The air beyond the bathroom was cooler, grounding, but the electricity still followed us, an invisible thread that refused to break. The apartment felt different now. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Yet even through the fear, something undeniable lingered. The look in his eyes wasn't panic anymore, it was resolve. I'll find out who did this, he said. And when I do, he stopped himself, his voice low, unfinished. Then, softer, are you okay? I nodded, though the truth was more complicated. I wasn't sure if my heart was racing from what had happened, or from him. He reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from my face, his fingers slow, careful. The gesture was small, almost ordinary, but it carried every emotion neither of us could name. The danger hadn't erased the connection, it had magnified it. We stood there for another breath, the space between us charged, not with fear this time but with something deeper, steadier, like fire learning how to breathe again. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window, reflecting off the still damp floor. The night had swallowed our secret, but the echo of it, of us, remained. The story wasn't ending. It was changing. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the city, someone was still watching.